Morning, fish keepers. How are we all doing? We've done it. We've made it to Friday. Let's do coffee. Woo! All right. We're not going to muck around too long because we have ourselves a guest sitting waiting. Bring them up. Oop, push the right button, Cam. Good morning to Liz.
There we go. Morning.
Hi, Luiz. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on with us. It's greatly appreciated. Are you able to please tell us what got you into keeping fish and how you got where you are today?
In fact, I was not really keeping fish from the start. I started by fishing.
Oh, right.
So yeah, when I was a kid, and then I noted that I really enjoyed the manipulating the fish and seeing the variable forms. And then when I started to study in the university, I just started to work with fish taxonomy from the beginning. So it was, I think it's love at first sight. But I got some fishes in my tank, some Corydoras, for instance, some plecos, but nothing serious, to be honest. Just for fun.
Cool. Okay. And what got you first interested in Corydoras?
It was funny because I started to working with the big plecos, the hypostomus, and I had to change my master's dissertation, and my advisor at the time, she showed me some images of Corydoras, and at the beginning I was not really happy because they are very small compared to the hypostomus. So it was really hard to analyze them and look to the bones and things like that. So I was not so happy, but the diversity is so big, and I quickly fell in love for them. And I'm doing this for more than 10 years now.
Cool. You've just seen that obviously the first group of fish you're dealing with were quite large and gone to a smaller one. How did that adjustment have to work with you for your research and your hands-on approach? Like, did you have to learn a whole new skill set, or did you just have to adapt a little bit?
Yeah, it's a lot of difference because when you work with hypostomus, we are talking about 20, 30 centimeters fish. And most Corydoras, we'll use the name Corydoras, but they're now different names, but yeah, you understand. So they are 3-4 centimeters, most of them. So it's really difficult, but I had to change the whole equipment and had to adapt to work with delicate fish. Although they are not that delicate, to be honest, because if you compare to tetras, for instance, they are much more resistant. The tissue is strong. They are armored catfishes, so they have an armor. So it's not exactly delicate. On the contrary, but the small size is very challenging because you need to have delicate hands, and I was working with bigger catfishes, so you can use some big scissors, knives, and then you had to use. Today I use some laminar equipment to operate cornea of the eye. So I use ophthalmic equipment today to.
Wow.
So it's a completely different equipment to deal with them. It's challenging, but at the university I was used to, for example, in botany, you have to open flowers. And I was kind of used to work with delicate stuff, but it was challenging in the beginning.
One of the things that we were going to ask you was how has your research techniques evolved over the years, but finding out that you started with big catfish and moved to smaller catfish is almost, it's like an evolution of your skill set. But since you kind of focused on the smaller catfish like Corydoras, has there been certain introductions to machinery and equipment that you didn't have access to at the start that's made working with such small fish easier?
Yeah. For instance, when you're going to prepare the skeletons, it's a lot of different because you use a technique which you bleach the specimens and you clear them, digest them, and then you put some pigment in the bones and cartilage. So you do the staining technique. And with the bigger fish, you have to put them. Generally, we put them in a box with some necrophagous beetles, and then they eat the flesh, and then you have a dried bone to analyze. However, this is not. It's kind of cool. However, you have to understand that the beetles, they start to eat everything, and then the bones start to disarticulate the specimen. So you have the bones falling. And with this technique of clearing and staining process, you have a full mountain skeleton articulated. So it's a lot easier to analyze the specimens like this. So you don't have to guess a puzzle of small bones of so you have the fish all mounted. So it's regarding the technique of clearing and staining the smaller fish, the results is far better. However, today we have the CT scans. In Brazil we have some, and the United States it's very common. So you can scan the fish and make a 3D model, but I don't think it will replace touching and seeing for yourself. It's for me, it's really important to, even with the CT scan available today for me, I am always interested in touching and seeing for myself and close to me. And so this cleared and stained specimens are very important for my analysis. And the biggest difference between the hypostomus and the Corydoradinae catfishes is the way the taxonomy is made with them. If you look to big plecos, they only will use the sternal morphology and color pattern, some counts like the number of teeth or number of plates. And when I entered the Corydoradinae world, it was much, much deeper than this. So I had to study a lot about the osteology of them. And today, if you look at the articles we are publishing, we can do a very, very specific and detailed description of skull, for example, which is very informative when you think about the evolution of the group. So if you compare the works with the big plecos with our work, you see that they still doing very similar to the beginning. So color, form, general form, some counts, and we are going further. And this was very, very interesting for me because today I have to say I work much more with the skeleton itself than with the remaining parts. They are very informative, especially the skull.
Especially when you're dealing with such small fish as well. When you can see the skeleton of that fish, it'll be easier to kind of spot the differences between species as well and help can identify.
Yeah, it's very useful. It's very useful because sometimes we tell, well, the form of the bone. If you think about a triangular bone or a square-shaped bone, it's completely different. The way the muscles will insert in this bone and the way the head of the fish will move is completely different. So the morphology of a bone is extremely complex, and it will imply a lot of things in the life of the fish. You know, how much he can open the mouth or he can move around. And so the skeleton is, I consider today, the most informative features in Corydoradinae systematics is related to bones.
Cool.
That entire little passage is just absolutely blowing my mind. Wow, that is awesome. Lots of stuff have come up for me in that. I'm really curious about how these bugs, insects worked for you. Is it quite an old method of doing it? Is it the best method? Is that just it's worked so well we don't need to adjust it? Like,
Yeah.
how has that come about to start with?
Yeah, it's basically because you have. Can you imagine the beetle? The adult is, I don't know. I think it's less than 1 centimeter.
Yeah, right. Wow.
So they're very small, and the larvae. The most important in this method is you to keep a colony of these beetles, because the larvae, they will eat a lot of rotten meat.
Okay.
And you can find these beetles everywhere. Basically, you just leave some meat outside, and then they will just appear there. And then you can put your skeletons. Of course, we don't use the flesh in natura. We just dry the specimen. We try to remove liquid as much as we can, and then we remove the excess of meat, and then we put to the beetles to eat. And this method is really good because the mouth of them is so small that they can remove every single piece of meat without causing any damage to the bone.
That is cool.
So this method is really interesting, and we use this for medicine in these days. You can use some maggots to heal some wounds, and so and that's exactly what we do, and they're very easy to keep. You just when they're not eating this, they really love the putrid aroma of the rotten flesh, so they are stimulated to reproduce. So you have to feed them with this, but you can keep the colony alive for a relative big time, feeding them with dog food, for instance. So
Right.
you can, yeah, they're easy to keep.
How long does it take for them to clean off a fish down to a skeleton?
If you do a good job with cleaning the excess of meat, you have a good skeleton in, I don't know, 10 days, 15 days. Yeah, it's
really
fast.
Cool. Nature
It's
is
fast.
awesome.
Yeah. So you can the problem of this technique is it works very well for big fish. But when you talk about the small fish, the bones are so delicate that the larvae and the beetles will eat everything, including the bones.
Yeah.
They're very delicate, So the clearing and staining process is the most interesting technique if you want to study the skeletons of small fish. But hey, you can keep them at home. You just need the box, some cotton, and feed them with meat. It's not that difficult. You can mount skeletons of everything, basically.
Cool. All right, we've had a couple of comments come up from that. Stephen just said he was going to grab a snack, but I think he's pretty good now. Right. Rebecca said, staining bones isn't taught in the UK. It seems we can dissect bones and clear, but that's it. I did highlight that, but I can't quite remember why. I'm assuming that's to do with that conversation that we were just talking.
I think it's Rebecca.
Yes.
Yeah. We published a couple of articles together.
Nice.
Yes, this technique is it's very old. The protocol is older than me, but it works very well, and you can keep the skeleton basically forever. You just store them in glycerin, and you just use some I don't know the name in English, but we call it thymol, which is it's menthol. It's used in candies with mint flavor. So they have a interesting property that kills bacteria and fungus, and so you mix with glycerin and you store your skeleton, and you can keep them for. I have examined some specimens with twice of my age, and in pretty good shape. Yeah, in pretty good shape. The dried skeleton, on contrary, you need to be very, very careful, because if you have you don't need to to be careful if you take care of them, but if you don't be careful, they will eventually get damaged because you you can let water close to it, so you don't have to, for instance, light and things like that. It will damage a lot easier, you know. So you lose the material soon if you don't have, if you don't cautious when you're manipulating them.
Mm-hmm.
So this and the cleared and stained fishes, you can I use my hands to manipulate them. You don't need to worry a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They're more resistant. Also,
Yeah.
We've had another question. Sorry. Feather Thin Films says that are Brocas and Hoplosoma getting split up anymore? Which kind of also leads on to the question I was sort of pondering is, with all this flesh stripping and looking at the bones, is that how different species of fish get recategorized because you've found different traits in them to put them in different sections? Is that how that kind of process works as well?
Yeah. This basically what made us to split the genus is because we have some rules in taxonomy. So the groups must be what we call natural or monophyletic, and Corydoras was not natural. In the middle of all the Corydoras, you find Scleromystics and Aspidoras. So if you were going to follow the rules of nomenclature, this is not the ideal scenario. So we had to keep the monopoly of Corydoras, making it a natural group, which is basically you have the ancestor, the common ancestor, and all the descendants in the same group. And the bones were very, very helpful to split them. Regarding this specific question, Oplysoma is a quite delicate group because although it's a large group with many variations in forms and colors, we were never able to find something really solid regarding splitting them from each other. No, it's very difficult, and when you try to, it's generally a little catastrophic, because you always find that some species which are very similar, they don't appear so close in the phylogenies. And in my opinion, after all these years working, I don't think splitting Oplysoma in other groups is really that wise. I don't think we have anything solid, you know.
Okay.
Regarding Brocas is a different scenario, because the Brocas, you can split them very easily. We are now preparing an article describing 2 species from the Tapajós, and we are going to explain this. We split Brocas in 4 groups of species, and you can see the difference is very clear.
Mm-hmm.
So when you compare, for instance, Brocas splendens with Brocas pantanolensis, you see a lot of difference there. You know, so Brocas is a very, very different scenario. So I expect that Brocas will eventually be split. And I don't know when exactly. And to be honest, that genus stuff is something that doesn't bother me at all, because for me, what is really important is the species,
Mm-hmm.
which is the natural entity. You know, so I like to recognize the species and the genus. Of course, we want something organized, and we want to make it organized, but I'm not so interested in splitting because this genus thing is something that we made up basically, and it's very open to interpretations. And
Yeah. So
I think
how many Brocas species are there at the moment?
I don't know the exact number, but it's I think it only loses to Oplysoma.
Right.
It's the largest. It's the second largest group,
Mm-hmm.
and we have 4 different clades within Brocas. And I'm proposing some features to recognize each group, but not proposing that they will turn into a genus, because I don't think this is really helpful, to be honest. And this time we did the most important thing, which was reestablish the monopoly of Corydoras. This was something that was really bothering us, because we knew it was a natural group. It's like, I don't know if you got the idea, but it's like using the word fish. When you say fish, you're considering so many different kinds of animals, and they don't form a natural group. You know, you're calling the hagfish and the lampreys a shark and a coelacanth. They are very different from each other. So we grouped them because they live in the water. They are overall similar in anatomy, but it's not a natural group. Like we don't have the same thing for reptiles. So the group reptiles is not a natural group because you cannot form a natural group without the buds. No, you need to have the common ancestor and all the descendants in a single group. But we keep using reptiles because it's very intuitive for people. So we use the words in our daily routine because it's very informative. When you say reptile, you have an image. When you say fish, you have an image, but they are not natural groups, scientifically speaking.
Yeah.
Corydoras was the same thing.
It's too broad a category to be accurate. So that does make sense why they decided to go ahead and split it up.
Yeah, because Aspidoras and Scleromystex were in the middle of them. That was the problem. So people see an Aspidoras and say, well, this is an Aspidoras, this is a Scleromystex. It's easy to see. But it was in the middle of what we call Corydoras. And that was the problem. And then we fixed this. So after that, I'm not, to be honest, I'm not really into that proposing names for genus. So this is not something I want to do because, to be honest, I like to be informative. I think what we do must be informative. And sometimes what we do is something that will apply only to you and a couple of people that we will understand. And I like to be more, I don't know, I'm more interested in solving problems in taxonomy. So eventually we came up to describing new species, but because that's part of the work. And but the main objective here is to fix taxonomic problems. And in this work particularly, I'm going to provide a broad discussion on how this nude shape, is informative or not to recognizing Corydoradinae catfishes, which is a broad and very important discussion because people use the head shape to identify them.
So, like, as general hobbyists, we'll identify a different fish by like spots, stripes, colors, type of scenario, just externally looking at them. What are you looking for when you've stripped them down to bones and all that sort of stuff, and looking at jaws to determine a different sort of fish or a different species? What's your mind going through to find out different things or seeing different things?
Yeah, well, we have if you're doing it correctly, you have to look to a broader scenario. So what I did in the past was I wanted to understand how the bones change in the family, in the whole family. So I could use this to understand in the group I was studying. So you need to do comparative analysis and analyze a larger group of specimens, because when you analyze a small sample, it's like looking for us. So you need to go to all the planets and collecting samples to understand how our species is variable, you know? And this is exactly how it works for the fish. You need to go look to a larger material. Try to understand where the species starts and ends. That's the challenge, you know. So some features, when you observe a lot of species, looking in this broader concept, looking at the family as a whole, you start to know that some features are very conservative. They won't change, or they rarely change. So when you see a fish changing these features that are generally conservative, it's a sign that must be something in there. So when you look for the shape of a bone, almost all groups present a square-shaped bone, and then you suddenly see a triangular bone. This is a very interesting sign because this bone is very conservative. So considering that it's conservative, it doesn't change so easily. When you see a difference in it, it's a good sign that you have something there. You know, and we noted that some particular bones, they are very, very informative at genus level. And eventually at species level, but mostly at genus level. But you need to do comparative analysis. You know, you just came to this conclusion because you look at so many samples and you understand how the evolution worked for the group. If you look only for your fish, you won't see anything. You need to compare it. This is why I basically travel for a lot of places, and thanks mostly to the hobby, because the hobby took me to these places. And I was able to look for, I think now I have almost all type specimens of Corydoras analyzed because of this. You know, so I have a few species that I never saw a specimen for today, so I can compare them easily. And I also look to the oplos. Also, I have here in this room Oplosternum, Calictis, Leptoplosternum, because I want to understand how the bones evolved in the family. And this is why it's important you to have a large sample, so you understand how the bones can vary or not. Sometimes they're very, very conservative. They don't change, even in different species.
At what point, when you've got a species and there's a certain level of variance within that species, at what point is the tipping point to become a different species?
Yeah, that's the most difficult part of the job. And I must say to you that what I used to do is I look as much as I can. So you need, for you to understand how a species is variable, you need to have a large sample.
Yeah.
And you eventually note that you add specimens and you don't see anything different from that. So after 100, you know that it doesn't matter where you pick the specimen, you have the same patterns you have already observed. So you know you can stop now. So you have understood how the species, so you can establish the limits. And this is the most important part of my work. And this is the way I do the work. I look a very, very large amount of material, especially the comparative material is large. I don't think, possibly, I think the only person alive that saw more species than I must be is Brooker. And I don't think anyone else have seen so many different species as I did in these years, because this is my obsession. And to do this, you need to visit the old museums and look for specimens and look material. And this, I was just before we start talking, I took some time to enter because here at my right side I have a stereo microscope, a lot of skeletons and dead fish here. And I was looking to, I do this, when I'm not giving classes, I'm doing this. So this is not just a job for me. It's basically who I am, you know?
Yeah.
You live it, you live and breathe it.
Yeah. So for you to see this, John, and that's a very good question, you need to look to a number of samples that will allow you to understand that, well, I think if I will add more specimens, I won't see anything new. It's repeating the patterns. So we are done.
I get it. Yeah. So the more samples you get, the more you can lock in that species and all its features. And then
Yeah, the Aspidoras work. Aspidora is not a very popular fish in the hobby, but the Aspidoras work is 200 pages. The reveal, you know.
Yeah.
I never looked so many specimens in my life as I looked to Aspidoras because they are very variable. The populations are very variable. So it was the most challenging work I did in my life because they are very, very variable. And to reach that point in which I was adding specimens and not seeing anything new, it took hundreds.
We've had a lot of questions from the viewers that were just sitting waiting, but I've got another question before we get into that. Do you get your samples as live fish, or do they come into you dead? And if they're live, this is going to sound a little bit grim, but what's your method for killing them so you can research on them and not damage them in that process?
I am the kind of biologist that I want to go to the field to catch them for myself. So I'm always doing expeditions. I was in the Amazons a couple of times and in the region, the Rio Paraguay Basin every month, basically. So I'm always in the field. And the most important thing about going to the field is looking the fish, and then you can understand where they live, some details of behavior, habitat, and things, very important things, you know, because today, if you look to the descriptions, you see that we talk about a little bit of ecology, conservation, some, it's very simple, of course, but we talk about some aspects for the people from the hobby. So ontogeny, the form and colors, shapes of the youngsters. And then, well, I generally go and capture them myself. Capturing Corydoradinae is very difficult because you have to pick them one by one with small hand nets. Yeah. And yeah, it's quite difficult because you need to go to the place, you need to find the right place, which is not that easy. And you have to fish them at night. They are in kind of a sleepy state at night. So you can approach them with the small hand nets and a flashlight. So you hold a flashlight in one hand, and then with the other one, you pick them with those small hand nets we use in tanks. And we preserve them after putting them in clove oil solution.
Right.
That's the best method, to be honest, because in the past people just threw them in formalin, which is quite cruel. So what we do today is we use an anesthetic solution with clove oil. They will sleep fast, and then you can put them in formalin. We use formalin 10%. They stay there for about a week, and then we pass them through alcohol. 75. I use 75%, and then you can store them basically forever, you know.
Yeah.
But if you do a good job with the formalin, you have material for a long time. But the most fair way, if you can say so, it's using clove oil.
Yeah, I've used that before, and it is very effective.
Yes. And if you don't want to kill them, you just need to use a non-lethal dose, and then you can manipulate them. And for instance, in the place the people cultivate the fish for food, they can measure and see the weight of the fish, and then return it to the water after that. But if you want to, in our case, we just put some lethal dose of clove oil and leave for a time so they sleep, and then you preserve them. The formalin is very important. So if you want to look to DNA, you just need to put the fish directly on alcohol. The formalin is very destructive for DNA.
Oh.
So you need to, yeah. It's best if you preserve them in alcohol only.
Right. So we'll bring up some of the questions that we've had. So Rebecca again has said, splitting up brokers makes sense based on behavior. B Bethany group is meant to be more aggressive. Is this a true thing that you feel?
Yeah, behavior can be something which is basically the result of changes in morphology also. So the most aggressive fish fighting with spines, you see the spine is prepared for this. So it's stronger, and you see some changes in differences in head shape, for instance. So the Corydoras can be, I'm seeing here a question, aggressive. Yes, they can be aggressive to each other, mostly. Especially if you have those groups of dominant males in the same tank, in the same place. They can be very aggressive. True Corydoras are quite aggressive with each other. Scleromystics can also be the males, the alpha males can be aggressive to each other also, but not with other fishes. They're typically aggressive with each other, especially males.
And we've got another comment from Rebecca, which will lead on to another one. Would taxonomists in the future be interested in including more ecological data in their papers, particularly gut contents?
Yes, I think so, because this is very useful. The descriptions today, they are not more restricted to providing some information on colors and forms. Today, we use the descriptions to propose the conservation of the species. The UCN uses our works to do this analysis of if a species is in a threat category or not. So the taxonomy today is much more applicable, if I must say, that it were in the past. In the past, you just saw people putting names in organisms, but today there are people that are only interested in this, but the idea we have now is to provide as much information as we can. And obviously, if you have this information, for instance, if you know what the fish eats, we generally provide this information. However, I saw a question about the diet. They have a very consistent diet of small invertebrates, especially some small arthropods. And most of them, they will eat different groups of aquatic or non-aquatic organisms. Like I have found ants.
Ants, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The new book, Fuller Yavers, will publish now. I have a chapter there about diet. Because because opening them, I always saw some parts of insects inside of them, and some other interesting. I found some. I have a small spider sample. Very small spider. Yeah, and insects. Larvae of aquatic insects are very common, and also the adults. And I have found in several of them ants, pieces of ants.
Yeah.
Wow, crazy. Cool.
Yeah.
So that, I think it might have been this comment you might have just sort of been referring to, but we can touch on it. Is what can we learn from the stomach contents of Corydoradinae in the wild for feeding in the aquariums, specifically in dry foods like fish protein, insect protein, and plant proteins?
Well, if you look to the data I have, it shows a clear predominance of invertebrates. It's the most part of what we found in the gut contents, and so I presume this kind of food is the more appropriate for them. Although I know that the cories can eat also a lot of other types of food in aquarium, but it would be interesting to give them some live food, because they are predators. It's strange because they're small, but they are predators. And although they don't have teeth, on mouth, on jaws. They have teeth on throat. So you can. I have found a lot of insects in the throat of them several times, in the middle of the teeth, the jaw teeth. So this is interesting because you can see, you can imagine a fish with a predator with larger teeth, but that's not the case of the coral. They don't have any teeth. So you just they
quite
use the
often.
pharyngeal teeth.
Yeah, I've seen my Corydoras. I've often enjoyed bloodworm and blackworms, and they kind of eat it up like they're eating spaghetti.
Yes,
You can
exactly.
see the
And
munching on it.
I have found it's just the bloodworm is a diptera larvae. So you can see these very commonly in the wild.
Yeah.
So bloodworms is if you ask me, I would strongly suggest this. You feed them with bloodworms because I have found several of them full of bloodworm pieces.
There was one of the viewers touched on another question from another viewer, highlighting that the behavior was a factor of splitting one of the species into two different groups, and one was more aggressive than the other. Now, Corys are not really known to be aggressive or not known for their aggression, but is it something that you've witnessed, and can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, they generally it's not exactly you can say intraspecific aggression, especially from dominant males. But you won't have problems with Corydoradinae in a communitary tank. You won't have a problem. So you just have a problem if you keep some large alpha males together and close to each other. They will eventually fight, and they use the spines for doing this often. And it's not a very aggressive fight when we are looking, because considering that they are small, it's not really, it doesn't seem like a serious fight, but for them in a small scale, they can hurt each other badly, because the spines, especially if you look into some groups of Corydoras, you see that the spines are very pungent and strong, and they can use the spines like this, and they will become paired side by side, and they can use the spines to poke, So this can lead to some losses. So if you have, especially the groups, when you have those very, very ornamented males, this generally you have some kind of aggressive between males, but it's not a problem if you want to keep Corydoras with other fishes. You won't have a problem. So I think this, considering them as a calm fish, it's when you look to them in a community with other fishes, they are very, very, they won't cause you any problem,
Okay.
But eventually, if you keep alpha males close to each other, even in natural habitat, you see that, what can I say to you? When we go to the field and you see an alpha male, it would be the only one. You look hundreds and you see a couple of them. In tanks, you see that the presence of these long-finned forms is very common. In nature, this is rare, because possibly the winner of the fights is going to display the whole features of these dimorphic males, modified males, and most of them don't reach this stage, So, for example, Longipenis, which presents a very long dorsal fin, it's very, very difficult for you to find specimens with long fins in nature, because this is what is expected when you look to natural populations. You won't see many grayback gorillas out there, You see that they are less numerous than not, because that's the way the society works. So you need to conquer the position, and then the other males won't display that modifications.
Yeah, right.
Makes
Cool.
sense.
Yeah. How many Corydoras are known currently? Do you know that number, or roughly how many are known to science?
The number of described species.
Yeah.
If you consider the whole Corydoradinae group, we're talking about 200, round this number.
Yeah. Right. And I'm naturally assuming there's a whole bunch that are being worked on, looked at, investigated that aren't currently described.
Yeah, some species are obviously not valid, and then we need to look at them. And this the most problematic thing is we have today. We are the only group working seriously with the group, so we cannot solve everything, and some problems will remain unsolved because it's impossible for us to solve everything, and unfortunately, some species will remain considered valid but are not valid, or some species will remain undescribed because we don't have the material. In Brazil, it's easier for us to go there and catch them, but we have a lot of forms in other countries that need to be described, and we have some partners, but it's difficult to collect fish in other countries. And so we are trying to do our best to solve a problem at a time. So now I have a student working with the Annuals group, which is, I think, today's most problematic species of the group. So we are trying to solve it little by little. But I already accepted that I won't live enough to solve everything.
Yeah. What part of that group are you finding the most problematic, or why is it problematic?
Problematic is basically a group that, for instance, you don't know anything but the holotype. You have the holotype, you have a single specimen, and that's everything you have. This is a problem because that part of understanding the limits, it's impossible with a single. So you have to get more. And sometimes it is not possible, simply like that. It's not possible to get more. Or, for instance, a species that are extremely variable. So these are very confusing, which is the case of most Aspidoras. It took a lot of time for me to... I started the work in 2014, and the work was published in 2022.
Wow.
So that was the time to assemble everything I had and produce the work. So it's not an easy task. So by problem, I mean species, sometimes the type is lost. This is a big problem because the guardian of that name is the holotype or the lectotype, the primary type. And when it's lost, you need to trust drawings, which are sometimes good, but most of the times they are not that good. And the descriptions in the past, some of them had 2-3 sentences. They are not very informative, So these are the problems we have to face, basically.
So lack of data, basically, is what makes it problematic.
Yeah.
So out of all the species that you've researched so far, what would you say has been one of the most fascinating ones to kind of really deep dive in on and study, if that's possible to determine a single species?
I think this article we are submitting this year was the most interesting of all. Because this, the species by the name ancestor. They're very odd ones. and it's a very peculiar species, extremely toxic, extremely dangerous for the fish. If you I saw that by myself. So if you keep them in a bag with other fish, it will kill everything
Wow.
very quickly. Yeah, it's a very, very powerful toxin. They're very big, strong, and they present that pattern, which is very weird, with the pale spots on the head and black markings on the rest of the body. And they're very, very robust and big. And they're very different from anything I ever seen in my life, including behavior. During the day, you will swear they don't exist in the place. They only appear at night, and they are very different from other Corydoradinae. The way they move, the way they behave, it's different from anything. And this work was really fascinating to me because the whole process of going there, capture them, seeing the whole habitat and things. It was in the middle of the Amazon, so it's a beautiful place with a lot of nice animals, nice fish. And I think this, it's right now, it's only test. We have 100 pages of information regarding this ancestor. So I think it was the most exciting species.
Okay.
It's different from everything.
Cool. So you say that when you publish a paper, now this is more. This is not really fish related, this question, but it's something that I've been wanting to ask since you started discussing that you publish papers for yourself with Rebecca. And what's the process and what does that achieve when you decide I want to explore a species or any subject within the your community, and what's the process from start to finish when you're publishing a paper, and at what point does that become recognized and accepted by the hierarchy of the community? If that's,
I think, well, the process of publishing is not complex. You need to prepare a manuscript, following the scientific method, and then submit for a scientific journal. And then once it's submitted, it will be analyzed by pairs.
okay.
Generally, they will call people that understands of the group, and so. In the serious journals, this is the way they do. So you send to, we call it blind review, because they will analyze your work without knowing who you are, or people that work with other groups sometimes may eventually get involved, but they generally call experts.
Okay.
To analyze. So they will generally two experts and plus the editor, which will also analyze the paper. And then you have basically three scientists. And to achieve this position also, for you to be an editor of a serious journal, this you need to work a lot to get this position. And the reviewers, they're very critical. And the whole idea is you will provide everything you have, and then you'll be judged by these people. And if they think the work is good enough, it is accepted and published. But the process of reviewing the paper is not so fast, because we generally receive a response. We had to change some things. The reviewers will send a lot of questions. We need to reply one by one. And if we don't agree with anything, you need to explain everything and say why you don't agree. And this is basically the process. So sometimes you do this several times before the article is accepted.
Okay.
It will go to them and then back to you 3, 4, 5 times until they accept, no, now this is good enough to be published in the journal. And what you asked about, the getting respected, and consider it, your opinion, consider it as something relevant, I think is the consistency of the work. So if you, when I'm reviewing a paper, what do I look? I look to the material. So this person looked to a good sample to say what he or she is saying. So what is the method? The scientific method was applied, and so on. So you need to be very critical. And sometimes it's not exactly you say a definitive no, but you say not that way. You need to change it. So after the changes, we are okay to go. So basically, I think when you have a good sample of comparative material, and you provide as much information as you can, and the people see that you look to a lot of things before saying it's new. So I think if you follow the scientific method alone, which is not trying to prove you're correct, but the whole opposite, you try to show that you tried to make your statement false and was not able to.
Okay.
So if you follow the process of the scientific method, so what do? I have a species, I think it's new, so I compare with all other species one by one. If I didn't find a match, this is a good sign I have a new species.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
For you to accept what I'm saying, if I tell you I have in my material 2 species of 200, it's a small sample, so the trust in your analysis is low. But if you say, well, I have a comparative material here of 90% of the diversity of the family, so you have something solid to say because you have a good comparative material. The sad thing about some works is that when you're going to check the comparative material, you see that they never look to the fish at all. And this is very problematic because I must say that after 10 years, a little bit more than 10 years, I think I'm starting to understand. And it's very difficult, to this discussion of this ancestor paper. Just to explain, it's a discussion. This 100 pages discussion is about a single bone.
Wow. A single bone.
A single bone. So this is, I'm presenting everything I know about how this bone evolved in the group. And it took me more than a decade to feel comfortable to saying what I'm saying. So I think that this will present evidence enough for people to say, well, I think this is a robust data.
Yeah. So the more research that's involved in producing the paper builds more credit and kind of weight towards that. Absolutely.
Exactly. So it's very important to understand that the seeing as much as you can is what will make your work robust.
So taking as long as taking your time and gathering as much information as possible in a scientific method before coming to any kind of conclusion. Exactly. I suppose you keep researching until you cannot come to any other conclusion.
Yeah, that's basically if you're following the scientific method, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So it's exhaustive and very repetitive. And well, you need to love it,
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah.
It's blown my mind that it's 100 pages on one bone. And then what was quite telling then is that you're trying to disprove essentially what you're trying to prove, if that makes sense. That was a really interesting mindset shift for me on how research kind of works.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting as well,
the whole conclusion of this work is this node shape is not really informative when you consider the phylogeny of the group. Because what I found is that it is much more related to ecology than to phylogeny. So that's basically the main result of this analysis, which is not exactly that new, because in the work published in Nature a little bit more than 10 years ago, they show that the ecological factors are very important to the group, to the evolution of the group. This is why we have different forms, but with similar color patterns occurring in the same site, because they are different in head shape mostly. And if your head shape is different, your access to food is different. So if you look to the long-snoted ones, they can dig deeper in the sand, while the short-snoted ones, they would just eat more superficial particles. So this is a limiting factor. So they can co-occur, they can live together without overlapping niches. So they don't really compete so directly for food. This is why they can co-occur, This is not a new result. As I told you, it's a little bit old, but the whole idea is to prove how the patterns in morphology corroborates this idea. So what we show that this node shape is not that informative to recognize a genus, for instance.
Wow. This is absolutely blowing my mind, and I'm hanging on every single one of your words, so this is awesome. We've had a couple of questions. Ironically, all that we have started all from Rebecca, but that's cool. Has anyone sequenced Corydoras sp ancestors? Sorry, I look forward to any work on it. The morphological work, molecular, is too simple and less reliable than it seems.
Yeah, I agree totally. Well, I am a person. I think someday they try to offend me, saying that I work like the guys from 200 years ago. But we're still reading the works, and it's still good. When you look to Eigenmann and Steindachner work, it's really, really good. So I prefer to be on their side, to be honest. So I am more old school guy. I don't work with molecular biology. I work with anatomy. I am an anatomist. And what I can tell you is, yes, we have tissue samples, but this will never be decisive for a decision, for instance. I look to morphology because I know the morphological pattern of each genus is quite constant. So we can trust the bones to tell us which genus the fish will fall. So the molecular biology is really interesting. We have some nice results, but in my decisions, I don't take them as something important, to be honest. If the anatomy says something, I will follow anatomy, because I have seen this. I have seen this working. And well, it's basically the expression of the DNA. That's the morphology. What you observe is the result of what is encoded in the DNA. So you are studying DNA at certain level if you look. But I don't think, for instance, a gene like most of the people use today, the CO1. It's a mitochondrial gene. They call it barcode. And I see people treating it like the answer for all the problems. And I don't see it that way, I don't see it. I see the constancy of morphology. And just look to the work Isaac Brooker did in the past. People have to swallow most of the genera he proposed, just look into the fish, because its anatomy is solid. That's the thing, But for you to come to this, you have to have a good sample. I see sometimes the guy with a couple of fish, anatomy is not responding anything. Of course, if you don't have a good material, you won't do this. correctly. And today, if you enter the internet, you can download thousands of gene sequences from the internet and perform your own phylogeny if you want, and right now if you want to, because people use the same data over and over and over. And you don't need to be an expert in the group. You just put in the computer and run your analysis, and this is it. Now, with morphology, you cannot do this. You simply cannot do this. Your article won't be accepted in a serious journal.
Yeah,
So if you want,
process.
So you need to see that. Well, you need to show that. Well, I have a robust material. I have looked at some good amount of the species of the group before saying anything.
Cool. I've got a question from myself, and this is a question that comes up with me quite often when we speak to people in the science of basically anything but in the science of fish. How do you feel, or how do you think there is a way of bridging the gap between scientific literature and general hobbyist information? Like, you've obviously got heaps of knowledge in your head, and a lot of it will go over a lot of other people's heads. How can you dumb down, that's probably not the right term, but how can you make that more digestible for people to understand on a really easy, consumable basis, so the hobby can grow as well as the science at the same time?
That's an interesting question, because I must say to you that today, I think the people that understands of the group in similar levels than I do, some of them are not biologists. Some of them are hobbyists, and I consider them to know the fish very, very well. So I think it depends on the time you put on it,
Yeah.
So you don't need to have a degree exactly to be anything. You just need to do a good job and follow the scientific method. So this is the beauty of science, That's the beauty of it. You just need to follow the method, and if you do everything correctly, you have a good work. So what I must say to you is, I feel that, and it's quite complicated for me to talk about it, because I usually get a little bit emotional, but the hobby changed my life. I was so attached to looking to dead fish, and when I first published an article, I was received so well, and the way people treated me, it was so amazing, because in our country, I don't know in yours, but in Brazil, being a scientist it's a joke. I'm a university teacher, but we are not that popular, among many, because people think we are, I don't know, lazy people that gain money from the government and didn't do anything. And in Brazil, there is no position as a researcher. It's very rare to find. You need to be a teacher, as I am, to do science. So you need to love a lot this. And the way the hobby treated me, like someone, it was very important for me, because it gave me confidence to keep working. And the support the hobby gave me along the years with everything, with money, photographs, travels. All my international travels to museum were paid by the hobby. All of them. I have visited museums on Europe and United States, all because of the hobbyists. I owe you a lot. So this is why in my articles I try to, and not exactly to make the language different, but I try to add parts of the work which would be interesting to them. So the scientific
ecology of the locations and things as well.
And also today I am very, very, I am concerned about the visual part of the work. So I know, because the people that read my work are not scientists. No one cares about, because as I told you before, we are the only group studying Corydoradinae seriously. So we are alone, and people are only interested in reading about their own groups.
Yeah.
So who reads my work? You. So I'm writing thinking about what you would expect from a work like this.
So you write your scientific work from a hobbyist perspective based on science.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
If you look to the works today, you see that I lose a lot of time in aesthetics. I want to make the article beautiful, attractive, and with information. We have variable topics in there, so you can skip the description itself, which is not exactly so edible, and you go to the parts that you would like most, like the natural history notes, habitat notes, sexual dimorphism, things like that. You can find this in the articles. You can find some information on behavior. You can find some information on the habitat, and this is the way I can merge a little bit of everything and produce something that it's some kind of interesting for both. But the most important thing, I think, it's going to the conventions and meetings and talking to people. And in my presentations, from the beginning, I was preparing more scientific talks, but today I changed this and I'm preparing more interesting talks for the people. So people want to know about collecting trips, want to know about what's new going on, the ongoing works, and this is really interesting because the whole point of writing something is having someone reading it. So it is, and some of my colleagues, it's sad because it was constructed along the times that we shouldn't approach the hobbyists, and this is really sad because I found a place for me, and this I feel really comfortable. So I think I never said no for a meeting like this. For me, it's really, really interesting for me to be in here. So that's the whole point, is talking. I think talking and spreading the information in this more, so like this chit chat. He said this for me. I think this is the most important part of the whole process, and giving back to the people who supported me along the years the information in a way they would like it.
Yeah, and I think that's what's been needed for such a long time. And we touched on this before, Cam, where you've got scientific papers, you almost need a degree to be able to understand those scientific papers, and the information that's buried within that could benefit the hobbyist so much, but the dialogue is just so far away from the average person that, and inaccessible, because they're not just lying around in libraries, and they're buried away on journals and things that most people don't even know exist. So to have somebody like yourself that is able to kind of translate it to layman terms and the hobbyist level is really valuable for the hobby, because we access that knowledge and we can understand the fish that we keep. It's not necessarily going to change how we keep them, because, like you said, it's the fish are still, these are still the same catfish, but just having that added knowledge and understanding of where it came from builds value and only connects us deeper with the fish themselves. So,
yeah, I think so. We have, I think we have a common passion. So this is what makes things so interesting, because generally some people treat it like a work, and for me, it's not. This is not work, work for me is giving zoology classes. This is work, but looking for fish, I can do this forever. It's not work, and the only people that share this love at the same level. I have a couple of colleagues, but sadly, most of the academic folks are snobs. That's the truth, So you think you are very special because you have a piece of paper saying you are a PhD, and then you think you're very, very special. So the problem is, I have met some hobbyists that are really, really important people in their own works, and in what they do, they're very, very important, and they are celebrities themselves in their own field, So this is really interesting because we feel very special sometimes because it's tricky because someday you wake up and someone is saying you understand about that topic more than anyone else in the world. So this can be seductive, but you need to understand that, as Isaac said to me, this is just a job. It's just a job. So there is nothing really. Having a PhD is not something really special. Everyone in the academy, it's something you need to enter the academy. So everyone here has a PhD. So there is nothing too much to it. If you're so attached to a piece of paper, maybe you're not that good. Because I like to believe that the body of work you live, it's the really thing that matters.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to live, a good body of work. So, which I hope to speak for myself. And I'm trying to. I'm merely starting. I got a permanent job 2 years ago. Now I have a comfortable position to work, and I'm just starting. This is something I'll do, I think, until the end.
Yeah.
And well, the hobby is, for me at least, it changed my life. You can see my works previous to my experience within the hobby, and you can see them after. You see there is, wow, it's completely different now. It's hard to get to this point, but some days I look to the papers and I can see the whole story, how my life changed when I started to interact and live closely. I talk to hobbyists every day. I'm on the groups, and I have some close friends. Some are here, to be honest. Rob McClure is here. Some of them are close friends, and I talk to them much more than I talk to most of my colleagues. They are more interesting people. Much more for me, because they love the fishes I love as much as I do.
So,
we'll just bring up the question that Rob the comment that Rob just made. So one of the most difficult pieces of I always butcher this word, Corydoradinae fish in the hobby is telling them apart. My long friendship and many conversations with Luiz has made this so much easier, and I think that is a significantly positive and uplifting comment. Cool. So what? Yep, fire away.
It's interesting because some people, they are going deeper. We have some people in the hobby today that can identify in the same level as I do, exactly the same level. And Rob is one of these. Today, I think he can identify an Aspidoras much closer than I do, and this is a very, very difficult thing to achieve, And he can. I can't remember a photograph and an identification by Rob which I didn't agree, And this is really, really difficult to achieve because Aspidoras is a pure nightmare to identify. So some people are in good levels of.
Let's just quickly double check if there is anything. Rebecca asked us a long time ago, and I was curious as well. Will Osteogaster schultzii become valid?
Possibly. We don't have a definitive answer to this question, but quite possibly, yes. The problem is this, if I'm not wrong, is the one which the type was lost. And it's difficult to come to a conclusion, but it's possible. It is valid, But we have some answers, like I can guarantee you that we don't have true Osteogastaenia outside Trinidad and Tobago. They are only there, In South America, if you look within Brazilian territory, we don't have true Anius. We don't have it. We'll have to resurrect a couple of names. Some of them we already know. Our conclusion in some of them are, I think, settled now. For instance, Macrosteus. Macrosteus is one of the synonyms of Anius, and we know now that it's clearly and easily recognizable species. And that's the funny part of it, it seems like a big problem. And when you look closely, it's not that nightmare we thought in the past. It's a piece of cake compared to Aspidoras. Just a piece of cake. The true Anius, they're very different from the forms we have here in Brazil and Peru or any other region close to us here. So we are going to, new names are rare. We have one new name coming soon, which is CW68. This name will come soon to be out, it's basically similar to Rebauti, Ozygatus, with the striped ones. They have a dog stripe running in dorsum, but they are small. They are pedomorphic. They are small. They seem like youngsters, and as adults. And this will be out soon. But we don't have, at least so far, we don't have much new species in the group to describe. It would be one of the small groups.
Cool. We've had another question from the floor. Adam has asked, I've been hearing that the dry season has been quite severe in Brazil this year. Is the drought affecting the Amazon, and will it even be an issue?
Yeah, it's we are facing a lot of problems here. First is not raining. It's very, very dry, and we are having a lot of fire. Right. So a lot of fire. So this is really dangerous. We have some very important and big rivers, very, very low. So even the Rio Negro, which is a gigantic river, is quite dry now. It's very, very low. So this is a problem, a big problem. The Corydoradinae, they will survive because they're very, very strong. And they can resist to places with no oxygen. They can live in places you think, no, there is no chance there is a fish here, and you find Calictidae there. They stand terrible places. But the big ones, especially the migratory fish, like the big catfishes, and, Salminus, Bricon, the big guys, these ones will suffer a lot with this dry season. It's very, very complicated here because all this fire, it starts to deposit ashes on the ground. And then when the rain comes, it will wash all these ashes to the rivers. And these ashes, when diluted in water, they cause severe damage on gills. And we generally lost a lot of fishes in this process, So it's quite alarming, to be honest. Some places I'm not able to collect in some places right now because it's dried.
That's unfortunate.
Wow. I did see that. I think it might have been an article on BBC came out yesterday discussing this. So it's really interesting to sort of hear some information that's not media driven, the actual people out there doing it and what's really happening. So yeah, that was wow. Yeah,
it's quite alarming, you know.
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
So, one thing I want to kind of go back on a little bit is when we were discussing about publishing papers and things, you identify yourself as a hobbyist, but we've not discussed what kind of fish and what kind of catfish that you actually keep in your aquariums at the moment. As separate,
I don't know.
Really pleasure.
I don't know if I deserve the title of hobbyist because I'm not anything close to you, but. Well, I like my aquariums are very, very boring because you can only see water, some trunks and leaves, and I always play some plecos, which is a group I like very much. I'm still studying the plecos, not in the same intensity, of course, but I'm also studying some plecos, and well, I generally like Hypostomus, Ancistrus. I also like Corydoradinae. I have kept many of them. They're very easy to keep. To breed is not exactly easy in some cases, but to keep, they're very, very resistant, easy, peaceful. And well, I have kept Polystictum, Pantanalensis, Mellini. These are the ones I remember. Many forms of Anius. But I never kept some Tetras, for instance. It was never. No, never. I have small experience with the process of breeding fish. So what I do now is I work in partnership with people that breed fish. It's easier for me because the structure you need to breed fish is not that easy, and you need people to help you. If you're going to do this seriously in a laboratory, for instance, you need people to help you. We have also a friend, a hobbyist, and also a scientist, which is Eric Thomas. He runs a lab with a lot of students helping, and so it's possible to do this. For me, it's basically impossible to do this in the university. So I keep the fish alive time enough to get some good photographs. Today, this is something I take very seriously. So I photograph everything I capture alive, and I'm producing nice photographic material of them. And this is good for books, articles, and so on. But I don't know if I can be classified as a hobbyist, to be honest. I kill more fish than keep them alive.
Not generally considered ideal, but I'm sure you will understand. Also, the sound of your aquariums, I'm not sure why you would consider them boring. They sound pretty good to me. That's right in my wheelhouse, to be fair.
Yeah. People ask, why don't you put some fishes in them? A lot of people ask me, where are the fishes? What are you keeping there? And they are hidden in small holes and things. I like to feel that they are there, you know.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it. And well, it's interesting to have them close to you. The feeling of have a tank around you it's speechless, you know. Look into them and observing in a tank, it's amazing. There is no one. I never met someone who said this was not cool. Everyone loves tanks.
Yeah, even people that don't keep them, when they come in and they look at it, they're fascinated by it. It's hard for somebody to walk past one and not be drawn in.
Yeah, so when we are receiving schools, the kids in the university, we generally put some fishes in tanks so they can see, and wow, it's a success,
Yeah.
People like to see them, and I learned that people want to see them alive, obviously, much more than pickled fish, of course.
Generally, yeah. Rob has brought up, or has another question. Would you say that the true Osteogaster Aeneas, or Aeneas, does not currently exist on the South American mainland as a whole?
Yes, I would say that. At least with the data we have now, it is, well, it's impossible to assume this. The form found in Trinidad, it's very peculiar and different from the forms we have in South America mainland. It's, well, at least so far, but I don't know. Some places are very difficult for you to get material. Suriname, Guyanas, it's very, very difficult to get material from them. But within Brazilian territory and Peru, which I had the opportunity to get specimens, no, we don't have true Aeneas in Brazil, and this I can guarantee you. And in South America, so far, we don't have any evidence pointing to this.
Okay, interesting. We've also had another question from Rebecca, which I seem to have lost. Where's it gone? I didn't star this one. I think I have lost it. Oh, there it is there.
I don't know, because some guys in the hobby kept. I saw Rebecca saying no one has a true Enya. I don't think you must assume this, because I have received some material from a guy, a friend of Hans Evers, who kept them in an aquarium, and I don't know if he's still breeding them, keeping them, but a guy, I don't remember his name, but he have captured them himself, and he was keeping them at least. And I received 4 specimens as a donation, and I have found some specimens in the British Museum in London. I have about 6 specimens, and I know that the guy kept, so I'm assuming that they breed easily as all other species of the group. So possibly he could bred them and spread it to someone. So I don't know if they are available right now, but it's impossible for you to don't know the difference, because they are very, very big. They're massive.
How big are we talking?
For a Corydoradinae, of course, we're talking about some specimens I have here are nearly 7 centimeters, 7 millimeters. So it's a big one.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one. So sometimes if you look to some other populations here from the region I'm living, you see that they are very, very smaller and slender, and the form of Trinidad is very robust and big. Very robust and big. And I found some other differences in skeleton. This species particularly, I feel very comfortable in talking about Aeneas. I'm using the old names because it's easier for everyone to understand, because I have looked to the whole type series of it. So I'm very comfortable in saying that we can recognize Corydoras, Aeneas, Osteogaster Aenea very easily. Rob is saying 10 centimeters from Trinidad. Yeah, I believe that.
That's a big
they're massive.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
They're massive. There is no one species in the group, as far as I remember, with that size and robustness. It's a chunky species.
Cool. So I found the question that Rebecca had. She said, how is the situation with exporting Neoplecostomus and Pariroharpus? I'm getting better sometimes. I really want to keep both of them after handling these specimens.
The problem with these groups, they are generally threatened. And we changed the laws in Brazil recently. And now you cannot legally export species in a threat category. And most of the Pariroharpus and most of Neoplecostomus are in any kind of category of threat, They're in danger. Most of them were captured in very, very small streams. Neoplecostomus and Pariroharpus are often found in what we call the first order stream. It's a very small stream. And these places are generally in close or even inside towns. And they're very threatened, to be honest. So there are species that are considered to be least concern, according to UCN. So these ones, you could get them. But the places they occur, generally, they're not so interesting for the fishermen, because generally they like to go to places where they will find a good number of interesting species. And in these places, we are talking about streams with 5-6 species in the stream, very, very small streams. And they generally want to go to hotspots, which you get 10, 20 species of interest. So these small streams are very, very difficult for you to have fish being exported for these places, because you won't find anything really interesting regarding financial return. And it's sad, because possibly the idea of having them being exported maybe would help to protect the species. It seems odd, but the interest in the hobby is very important to the conservation, because the fishermen don't want the fish to end. They want to keep making money. You can use the example of the zebra Corydoras. The fisherman doesn't tell anyone. No one knows the place. I was there for myself. I tried at least 2 times, and it was not possible. We captured a lot of Corydoras, but not even a single one. And the fisherman said he won't reveal the place, because he is exporting in small numbers once in a year, and obviously it's a gold mining experience. So they don't want the fish to end. It's strange, because people think the hobby is always negative for some fish, but sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the hobby helps to protect the fish. Sometimes it is devastating, of course, but sometimes the fishermen hide the places and don't tell anyone, and so a single person knows the place. So the species will be protected, of course, because the guy won't reveal. By any money, you can offer money, you can offer everything, because his family, he's maintaining his family with that fish.
Absolutely.
So and for us, this is good. In this new article, for example, we will not reveal the exact place which we captured to avoid overfishing.
I mean, other than overfishing, is there any other conservational issues that are affecting Corydoras?
Basically the destruction of the habitat. Gold mining in the Amazon, I consider gold mining as one of the most problematic. I have seen this closely, and you can see from images from space. You can see a river being destroyed. They use small machines, larger machines, and they will revolve the whole substrate of the river in search of gold and so on. And it's devastating. The gold mining in the Amazon is I consider one of the most problematic stuff right now, and they are very dangerous people. We don't want to find them, and we are collecting the Amazon it's quite complicated in this sense, because some people are quite dangerous, and the gold miners are very dangerous people. I don't know in other places of the world, but in Brazil they are very dangerous. Gold mining in Brazil is mostly illegal.
Really?
Yeah,
Didn't know
it's
that.
mostly illegal. Yeah, because the devastation you cause to a stream is, and it's almost unreversible. It's too much. You destroy the structure of the habitat with machines, and then you put some chemicals in the water, mercury, for example. So it's quite complicated, and we have other problems like deforestation. But I consider today in the Amazon, at least, gold mining, it's terrible, and also the damming process of hydroelectric power stations, also terrible. The impact of these dams is absurd. It's devastating, and these are the two I consider them. People generally speak about the agricultural process of making space for the cattle, but when you compare to gold mining and damming process to hydroelectric power, this doesn't
So
come close.
is there any organizations working against the gold mining at this moment for the benefit of the fish?
Right now, yes, we have our main organ in Brazil. I have seen this for myself. They are very aggressively fighting them. I saw burning machines, airplanes, arresting people. But they're a plague. It's very difficult for you to eliminate something, and it's very, very cultural in the north of Brazil. The mining thing.
Yeah.
It's that kind of crazy dream. You find anything, and this would change your life. You'd be rich, and there is some kind of it's like, I think, happening in other places around the world. It's some kind of a fever.
Yeah.
And people believe they will find anything valuable and they will make a lot of money. And the result mostly is you destroy a place and don't get rich. That's the most common result.
It's a shame.
Yeah. Slightly off topic, we had a comment a little bit earlier, or a question, sorry. I often keep killifish in the same tank as cories. Have you ever come across killies while collecting Corydoradinae? I'm going to get that word eventually.
Yeah, but it's a very we have Corydoradinae. They are not exactly so homogeneous considering habitat. People think they are, but in natural habitat they are not exactly like this. The Anus group, Osteogaster, for instance, they really prefer calm waters, stagnant waters, and the substrate is typically some kind of mud. And so in these places, when you have stagnant water, mud substrate, you often found some killies. Of course, not so abundant when you go for a specific collecting trip for killies, but it's common. You find some Melanorivolus with Osteogaster. It's not that rare, to be honest, but it's not common. But you can find Osteogaster is very common, and also some Gastrodermas, which is the elegans group. So these elegans group, they also enjoy calm waters. And then we have the true Corydoras, the noted ones. They are the opposite. They really love some rapids. It's very interesting when you go to the habitat because you discover these things. And some species of brockies, the typical brockies, like Multiradiata, Splendens, Britsky, they live in places, in extreme places like mud, no oxygen water, stinky water, and they love these places. You often found them in places you just swear there's nothing living in there. And so in these places you can often come across some killies. It's not that rare, to be honest.
Wow, cool. Can you tell us about any sort of recent expeditions or field work that you've been involved in?
Well, right now I was involved in collecting trips to a region, a very interesting region, which is the Upper Guaporé, where we have discovered a lot of nice species, several Corydoras. And if you look to the map, you see that this region is in the border with Bolivia, where Joachim Nack described a lot of species. And we have found lots and lots of beautiful cories in there. It was very, very exciting for me to see Sturby, Harold Schutze on the field, and others, Guaporé, Savinus, Albolineatum. So a lot of species. Some sites you could find 5 or 6 species of cories in the same site, but none of them are new. Most of them were described by Nack. But I have found a beautiful new hypostomus, beautiful, simply beautiful, from the Cochleodon group. And we also found some woodcats.
Cool.
Which are clearly new. At least one of them is clearly new. The other one seems to be also, but one we are sure it's new. And this place is, it's simply beautiful. It's a region when you are changing from the Cerrado to the Amazon. So it's a transition, and you find a mixture of groups, very interesting groups. So you can find in the same places cories, electric eels, plecos, tons of tetras, and it's I have never seen a place so rich. And this is the Rio Madeira basin. The Rio Madeira is the richest river in the world. There is nothing compared to the Madeira River, and the Guaporé is one of the main tributaries, along with the Madre de Dios, which is also a very, very beautiful place with a lot of new stuff. We described some species from there along the years. I have published them curiously with hobbies. Hans Evers was an author of these works because he and Ian captured the fishes I analyzed, and including Corydoras fulleri, which was described from the Madre de Dios region, which is a very beautiful place. The Rio Madeira is an incredible place. So we captured there. We have been there 2 times, a week per time. I have barrels of material here, and we are working on them right now. And we have at least 2 good new species to describe from there. One hypostomus, which is, I think, after the cores, is my favorite group. They're lovely. And this one particularly is really beautiful. And they have spoon-shaped teeth, as Rebecca is asking, and beautiful, simply beautiful. And, well, I'm planning other collecting trips also to capture some specific species, but nothing as big as these ones from the Guaporé, which we are studying constantly because there are popping up a lot of interesting stuff from there.
What does it feel like when you discover a brand new species?
You beat me to it.
Well, I have done this several times, but it never get boring.
Is it something that you know at the time, or is it not until you get the material back to the lab and
It
kind of break it
depends.
down?
It depends on the group. The hypostomus was, I just saw it and wow. I said, well, when the first one came, I said, we need more because there is nothing like this. And well, it's amazing. It's amazing. The emotion of, for me, being on the field and collecting is, wow, it's a moment of connection with nature. And it's the moment when you put in practice the things you know about nature. So it's a beautiful experience. And I'm always saying to the hobbyists, you have to experience this at least once. I have received some hobbyists in Brazil. I know some hobbyists are traveling to other countries. I have some friends going to Colombia. I have some friends going to Peru, where Ian runs a very interesting project there, the Go Wild Peru. If you can, go, because it's a beautiful experience. Beautiful.
Have you named any species or had any species named after you?
No. This is something people generally ask me about this, and I have mixed feelings about this because one of my my biggest fears is having a fish named after me in a crappy work. And that would ruin the whole experience for me. So I trust in a few people that could do this. But to be honest, I think I have so many people I want to do this for them. And I don't know, I think I have a long road. I want to feel that I truly deserve this when it comes out. And I really hope when it does, if it does, the work is good. Because if the work isn't good, this would be devastating to me, to be honest. Because you must understand that when you do this for someone, it's the most beautiful thing a zoologist can do, to express admiration or friendship or love or anything. Sometimes there's just admiration for what the guy or girl have done in the past or is doing. But most of the times, you honor people that directly help you and are involved in the whole process. I have named fishes after Hans Evers, Ian Fuller, Rob McClure, Stephen Grant, and there will be more hobbyists being honored soon. And I have announced in the last meeting that I will describe a fish after Eric Bodrock. And there are other people I want to honor. And I don't. What I want to, being totally honest with you, what I want to is to be recognized as a good professional. That's what I want to. I don't want someone name a fish after me because we are friends.
I understand that.
Yeah, I would really enjoy to be honored like this if I truly feel that the body of work I left is good enough.
Yeah.
I name fishes after people that I really like or admire, and so because they help in my personal life. And well, this is really important. For you to work well, you need to feel good, you need to be well. And I could do the work I do because of the help of the people from the hobby. Most of them really helped me during this journey. So but I don't think about these right now. I think about doing good jobs. I want to provide jobs that will cause good impact. So every work I publish, I want it to be a little bit better than the previous one.
So how would you say that your work contributes to how we as hobbyists keep our fish? Do you how do you see that affecting? Did you think that the knowledge and information you share or the scientific community shares changes how we keep our fish, or is that hobby driven or industry driven?
I think the way I can cause impact in the hobby is if you're interested in labeling correctly your fish, I think my work helped. So some people just put the fish in the tank and leave them, but most of you guys, you want a good ID.
Yeah.
You want to know what you keep. You want to know how to recognize. You don't want to be when you depend always on other people to say which fish you have. Most of you want to know by yourselves how to identify the fish. And I think in some way, the work I like to believe this, the work I did is helping you to refine the eye to identify the fish you have.
Okay.
So if you're interested in identifying the fish correctly, I'm always available, but I always providing ways for you to do this alone and do this by yourself, because we are looking to questions, complicated questions, but we are also looking to things that can be applied in a regular day, because I am a person that believes that science must be touchable. I think if we keep science away from non-academic people, we are never going to cause real impact in society.
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea, is to talking with people, and as you said before, and transforming this data in way someone in some random part of the world will read and understand and feel comfortable in saying, oh, I have this fish because I have evidence enough regarding color pattern, form, and everything, and I can perform a good ID. So this is the impact I like to believe I did.
I think you're achieving that already from what I'm seeing in the comments as well. It's so keep it up. Definitely keep it up.
Yeah. We've had another question off the floor. The big question that everyone always asks is what substrate to use for curry catfish.
Look, people always think that sand is the best substrate, and it's generally, when you look to the natural habitat, you find sand, but we have some species that will live and apparently prefer mud. What I can tell you is if you are going to choose a substrate, you need to choose a soft substrate. That's the common thing about the most common substrates you provide to them. So if you provide a soft substrate, you are going well. So those larger gravels will be terrible, especially if they are sharp. You have them hurting themselves, and so this is not ideal. So I think if you're using sand, mud, I think it's difficult for you to keep mud in a tank. It must be difficult to keep the water quality. I don't know. You know better than I. But I think mud it's generally full of organic matter. It's stinky. The places are complicated to collect there. So I think you are going well with sand. If you're going to keep cories, you must have sand on substrate. You won't miss. If you're going to nature, you find them in other places. However, for feeding, they will always search patches where sand is very common. So they are stand still on gravel, but not feeding on gravel. And when you see them feeding, you know that they look for places where the gravel is not so present and you have more sand. So it's if you want to, you can have some stations in your tank with some patches of sand. If you want to put gravel, that's okay. They live on gravel, but they don't feed on gravel.
Understand. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. How do you see the future of Corydoras research and conservation?
Yes, because one of the results of our work is to provide a geographic distribution map. And this is one of the most important things analyzed by the UCN. If a species is widespread, the chance of it being extinguished is lower because you have several populations spread. When you have a very restricted species from a small place, you have a species that a single event can vanish with the whole species. So geographic distribution is one of the main results of our analysis. So if I understood well, I think the most important thing we do with taxonomic works is to provide maps on distribution and also populational data. For instance, when you go to the field, you note the number of specimens you find in a shoal. Some species, they are present, always present, but in few numbers, in smaller numbers, and other species, they are very abundant. You find them in tons. And these species, they are not, you cannot treat them equally because one of the forms is naturally not abundant and other ones are very abundant. So this kind of data we provide is important when you get to perform. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but UCN, they have some criteria. And one of the most important criteria is the area which the species occupies. So this is really important to establish if it's in the threat category or not. So our works are very important to take this decision. And generally, the taxonomists are involved in this process. Curiously, because in the beginning, when I was a student in graduation, I was always thinking that the guys from the ecology would do this. But when I was in the UCN reunion for the first time, there were only taxonomists there. Because the most important data to run the criteria from the UCN is distribution.
Cool. Very good.
So, all the work that you've done to date, papers that have been published, do you have them published in one particular place, or is there somewhere in general where people can access your work for their own references?
Well, I opt to publish in open journals. I think it's very complicated to accept that we need to pay to publish. Sometimes it's complicated because you need to play the game, and the academic game will force you to publish in journals with more impact eventually. So sometimes you have to play the game and pay to publish, which is ridiculous. But I generally publish in open journals. I have most of my articles are published in open journals like Zootaxa, Neotropical Ichthyology, most of them, and also Journal of Fish Biology, which are the three very important journals in taxonomy, in fish taxonomy, and they are all open. You can enter the website and search for them, and you can download the paper. But other journals, they will charge you just to read the paper, which is completely absurd. So this is why I always send in the papers to everyone who wants them when they're closed. The last one we published, the phylogeny one, was closed. So I send the PDF to everybody. I like to spread the work as much as I can. So the most practical way of doing this is publishing in open journals, open source. And well, I think Zootaxa, Journal of Fish Biology, and Neotropical Ichthyology are the best journals. You can download for free, you can read, and they are relatively fast.
Okay. And if somebody was looking to get involved in conservation work on any level, is there anywhere that you could recommend that people can get involved to try and help preserve the the areas for Corydoras or fish in general?
I think they are the most important thing. I think the interaction that I had with the hobby is to suggest, and most guys ended up following this, is suggest you to buy fish from legal sources. I think this is the easiest and best way to help conservation. The problem is some people don't care about buying fish from smugglers. And this is really sad because we have serious people working in Brazil to legally export fish.
Yeah.
And you can get most of the fish you want legally. That's the good part of it. You can get them relatively easily, but people, I don't know why some people insist. And we have some places are easier. For instance, I noted that all these conversations had a great impact in the United States community, in the Europe community, because people started to refuse to buy from some sources, which are widely known as illegal. And giving money to the smugglers is, well, it's basically you're giving a gift for a wrong deed, So get your fish legally. This alone is so helpful, because you're going to fund serious people.
Yeah.
And we have two guys in Brazil exporting legally, Hudson and Ivan. They're exporting a lot of fish to the United States, to Europe, and they are serious people. We have a lot of serious people working with this. And I think the most important thing here is we say no to the smugglers. I think this is the best thing we can do to help.
Okay.
Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of our structured questions that we have. So we like to end our Finatics Friday Coffee Dates with something we call a School of Six, which is 6 very short answer questions that aren't meant to stump you, but every now and then they do. So my first question for you is, doing coin toss, do you call heads or tails?
I need to choose?
Yeah,
Tails.
Tails never fails. Are you a tea or a coffee drinker?
Coffee.
Okay. Are we alone in the universe?
What?
Are we alone in the universe?
Right now, yes.
Okay. If you could have a meal with somebody alive or dead, fictional or real, from any point in time, who would that be?
Wow. I would really enjoy talking with Steindackner.
Sure. Paper, scissors, rocks. What's your first call?
Rocks.
Sure. And what is your unicorn fish? One that you want to document, catch in the wild, keep, spawn? What is the one fish that sort of eluded you for some period of time?
I think I will name it an hypostomus. I think it was hypostomus cochleodon.
Very cool. And my last question for you is, where can people find you or find your work if they want more information about you and the work that you've done?
Well, I'm always updating my Facebook. So you can find me on Facebook. You just type Luiz Tencatt, you find me on Facebook. If you want to request to be friends, I'm always sharing my work there. Facebook is a good place because most of the serious groups of fish are on Facebook. So I usually share everything on my Facebook profile.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It has been absolutely phenomenal. I normally take notes when we're talking with people. This is easily the most notes that I've ever written during one of these. You've definitely opened up a lot of questions to me, and I know you've opened up a lot of questions to everybody else. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much for joining us, and thank you everybody who's been in the chat. This has been an absolute blast. I hope you guys have a really good day or evening, wherever you might be. Have a good one, team. Happy fish keeping, and catch you later.
Have a good weekend. Thanks, Louise.